like it, not chapter 2, Act 2. Scene 1, yeah. I'm sorry. Bible is lit first class, so I'm thinking chapter verse, and totally different. Act 2, first scene, we're in the wood. We're in the forest of Arden. We've not seen any of these characters before, so this is our first introduction to them. Okay, Duke Senior, the usurped Duke, the Duke who has been kicked out of the court, in various lords and such. Ammia's 2 or 3 lords dressed like foresters come in. And so Duke Senior opens up with this little speech. And I'm going to try to get us through As You Like It today. We'll see. So Duke Senior starts. Now, my co-mates and brothers in exile, hath not old custom made this life more sweet than that of painted pomp? Okay. Notice the two things that are juxtaposed. They're put in opposition. This life, painted pomp. This life where? Obviously. In the wood. Okay. He says, more sweet than painted pomp. What's painted pomp? The pomp as in pomp in ceremony. The pompous life back in the court. Why is it painted? What's meant by painted? Okay. Largely in Shakespeare, especially in the sonnets when we see the word painted, but also in most of the plays, unless it is specifically referring like to a painted wall, almost everywhere else, it simply means artificial. It's an R. Artificial. Painted. It's put on. It's a covering to cover whatever the reality is. Usually, it makes reality appear better than it really is. Okay? So, what makes this life more sweet, however? Old custom. What's old custom? Notice it's not old customs. Habitual use or habitual practice. Because we've been here so long, now this life is what? It's better than life back at the court. He has learned to, as Chaucer puts the phrase, make a virtue of necessity. Okay? Are not these woods more free from peril than the envious court? Envious. That is, the court is where those full of envy dwell. Here feel we not the penalty of Adam. What's the penalty of Adam? The fall of Adam. Does he say we're not dying here? We're not sick here? We don't suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune? Yeah.
Would it refer to how we feel the passage of time? Like being in the woods, it's kind of timeless compared to being in court where you feel it drag on?
Could be. Could be. Here feel we not the penalty of Adam, comma. The season's difference. Does he mean here we don't feel the season's difference? We don't feel when it goes from spring to summer to winter to fall? As the icy fang and churlish chiding of the winter's wind, which when it bites and blows upon my body, even till I shrink with cold. Shrink. Withdraw, right? You don't go out under the cold and stand wide open. You want to conserve that body heat. So, even till I shrink with cold, I smile and say, this is no flattery. These are counselors that feelingly persuade me what I am. Does all of that help inform his understanding or what he means by the curse of Adam? I think yes. So what's he saying about life in the natural world as opposed to life in the court or city, if you want? You can extrapolate from court to civilized society.
He's saying that he's accepted the sin?
Yes. Well, not accepted the sin, but accepted what? life is more than the court. Okay? Or you can rephrase that and say, life is actually less than the court. You don't need the court in everything. Look at those lines again. Here feel we not the penalty of Adam, that is, and I think he's listing these. We don't feel the penalty of Adam. We don't feel the season's difference. We don't feel, okay? And then he says, this is no flattery. These are counselors that feelingly persuade me what I am. What are the counselors? The churlish chiding of the winter's wind when it bites and blows upon my body. The season's difference. Okay? How are these counselors? What counselors do what? They give advice. They teach.
So they're telling you as it is rather than in the counsel where it could be what it is and it could not be what it is.
What do, let's say presidential, counselors and advisors sometimes do when they give advice to a president? Just a generic president. Don't think of any particular one.
Persuade them to their goals.
Bingo. They have their own agendas, right? Some of them do. Now, some counselors and advisors, if we can go on history, some do think only of what the president's goals are. But an awful lot of them, they've got their own little machinations going on behind the scenes. Okay? He says these counselors, which are all what? The natural weather. They do what? They feelingly persuade me what I am. Feelingly. They don't persuade me intellectually. They tell my body, it's cold out. You're a human. You need protection. Or they tell my body, it's hot out. You need to find somewhere cool. Or there's not much food. You're hungry, etc. There's no what there. There's no flattery. Nature doesn't flatter. We've become so divorced from nature that we describe nature in what terms? Almost universally, especially in the media, you hear this. Like we're at war with it. Okay? We talk about tornadoes attacking towns, more specifically, trailer parks. They don't attack anything. They just do. That's it. Okay? Sweet are the uses of adversity. Notice the speaker doesn't say adversity is sweet. Adversity is pleasurable. Adversity is pleasant. Not what he's saying. Sweet are what? The uses of adversity. That is, adversity can be used. For what purpose? Which, like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in his head. And this our life, exempt from public haunt, that is, court and such, finds tongues where? Tongues, that is, speeches, sermons, in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. Okay? What's the adversity? Living in the wood. But he's saying, what about that adversity? I have to learn to take that adversity and do what with it? Turn it to good. In other words, I had friends, past tense, who used to talk about, I don't remember, one of their parents would say, to every silver lining, there's a dark cloud. Notice the perspective there. Rather than, to every dark cloud, there's a silver lining. This speaker is saying, to every negative thing, there's what? There's an opportunity for some kind of good to come out of it. So he says, what do? We find tongues in trees, books in running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. Tongues, books, and sermons What's the purpose of all of those? What is a purpose, at least, for all of those? Tongues meaning speech. Teaching. There's a teaching element. That is, I can learn from trees. I can learn from stones. I can learn from brooks. Amiens. I would not change it. Change there means exchange. I would not exchange it. I would not exchange the life I have now, here in the wood, with what, obviously? Back in the court. And it was a commonplace in Shakespeare's day. He's not the only poet who does this. John Donne writes an awful lot of poems that deal with comparing the life in nature with the life in the court. And what most of the poets and playwrights do, with a few exceptions, Ben Jonson's one of them. Ben Jonson really elevates and celebrates the court. What most of them do is they talk about, the court is like, if you're familiar with the line from the first Star Wars, it's like Mos Eisley. It's a despicable, vile pit of scum and villainy, etc. Why? How do people often act, quote unquote, at court in government? Just look at all the quote unquote whistleblower stuff. Not only now, but even during Obama's, tenure. Are they really, really, honestly, seriously, most of them, acting out of entirely noble purposes? No, what a lot of them are doing is they're saying, this president's goals don't align with my understanding of what government ought to be. Therefore, whistleblower. I'm going to disagree with that by saying this, okay? And not just Obama's. I mean, Bush 2, Clinton, Bush 1, ever since the Whistleblower Act of 78, I think it was passed. You started seeing all kinds of people coming out with policy differences, okay? I would not change it. Happy is your grace that can translate the stubbornness of fortune into so quiet and so sweet a style. Okay, your grace. That's what? That's a title, okay, because of his elevated stature, Duke. But it can also refer to the kind of theological idea of grace. Because grace can do what? It can translate the stubbornness of fortune. That is, happy is the grace you've received. Why? Because it can translate the stubbornness of fortune. Why is fortune stubborn? No matter what happens, fortune gets her way. You can't stop fortune. You can try, but she always has the final word. So if you can translate that stubbornness, that is, if you can translate being down here on the wheel into quiet and sweet a style, you're doing pretty good. Because if you can turn this into good, then what does that say about up here? Doesn't matter, really. Duke Sr. Come, shall we go and kill us venison? Yet it irks me, the poor dappled fools, being native burghers of this desert city. Native burghers of this desert city. You were talking earlier about the Germans appropriating Shakespeare. Burgher is a German term. What's it mean? Citizen. Who's he talking about? The poor deer are native citizens of this city. The forest is the city for deer. Notice, who's the foreigner? We are. He's saying, but I feel bad about killing the deer in their own homeland, Should in their own confines with forked heads have their round haunches gored. The first lord, yeah, I agree. Melancholy Jaques grieves at that, and in that kind swears you do more usurp than doth your brother that hath banished you. Is Shakespeare some kind of proto-eco, warrior? Because that's the kind of language. Jaques says, you are worse than your brother. Why? Your brother usurped your position where? in the court. The implication is you got to expect that kind of underhanded dealing. You've done what? You've moved off into the deer's place, and you've taken their natural realm. That's even worse. Poor deer never expect that to happen. You were the Duke. You should have kept an eye on your little brother, especially in the light of read a bunch of other Shakespeare plays. Okay, Tempest, Hamlet. Geez, they're almost numberless. Okay, so skip a bit, and the Duke asks, Duke Senior says, but what did Jake say? Did he not moralize the spectacle? That is, did he not kind of make a sermon about it? And the First Lord talks about, some of the stuff he says. And I want to pick up around line 57. 56. Wherefore do you look upon that poor and broken bankrupt there? So this is the First Lord saying what Jake essentially said. Thus most invectively he pierceth through the body of the country, city, court, yea, and of this our life, swearing that we are mere usurpers, tyrants, and what's worse, to fright the animals and to kill them up in their assigned and native dwelling place. So by saying he pierceth through the body of the country, city, court, he's doing what's called anatomizing, anatomizing. He's looking at it from an anatomical kind of perspective. So he takes the body and he does what? He breaks it down. He takes apart its anatomy. The body of the country, city, court. Notice, what's he doing? He's going from the larger, the macro image, the country, to the city, to the court. The court's the smallest of those three kind of totalities, if you want. Okay? And what does he say when he anatomizes all of those? He says, we are usurpers. We are tyrants in our life. And what's worse, we're killing these little animals in their assigned and native dwelling place. Duke Senior, did you leave him thinking like this? He goes, yeah. Yes, we did. Okay? 2-2. Duke Frederick with the Lords. We're not going to talk about it much. Back at the court. Okay? And what are they discussing? Where's my daughter? She's left with her cousin. Okay? 2-3, Orlando and Adam, and they meet up. Okay? Adam addresses Orlando in response to his questions. And he says, verse 9 and following, 9 and following. Your praises come too swiftly home before you. Know you not, master, to some kind of men, their graces serve them but as enemies? That is, their characteristics, their qualities, their traits serve them but as enemies. No more do yours. Your virtues, gentle master, are sanctified and holy traitors to you. That is, your virtues, because they are virtues, are going to betray you. Now, what kind of virtue can betray someone? How can it undermine someone? Because we think virtues, those are strong things. I mean, it relates to the Latin word for power. Those are powers that we have. Not Marvelian superhuman powers, but kind of. How about honesty? How can honesty be a virtue that betrays you? What's that stupid movie about the guy who cannot tell a lie?
Liar, liar.
Liar, liar. And what happens? People ask him questions and he tells the truth all the time. Well, if you're totally honest, how many friends are you really going to have? Probably not many, So that's just one example. Oh, what a world is this, Adam continues, when what is comely envenoms him that bears it. What is attractive, what is good, envenoms him that bears it. Orlando, what's the matter? In other words, what's your point? What's going on? I don't understand. Oh, unhappy youth, come not within these doors. Within this roof, the enemy of all your graces lives. Your brother? No, no, brother. Why? Because a brother wouldn't do this. No, yet the son, yet not the son. Why? Because the son of Sir Roland de Bois would not act like this. Okay? I will not call him son of him I was about to call his father. He hath heard your praises, and this night he means to burn the lodging where you used to lie, and you within it. Your brother's going to kill you tonight. He's going to set fire to your home. If he fail of that, he will have other means to cut you off. I overheard him in his practices. And he says, why whither, Adam, wouldst thou have me go? Where would you have me go? Just not here, somewhere else. Wouldst thou have me go and beg my food? Or with a base and boisterous sword enforce a thievish living on the common road? You want me to become a highway robber? This I must do, or know not what to do. Yet this I will not do how I can. This I must do, or I don't know what else I can do, yet I will not do this, do whatever I can. I'm not going to rob. I'm not going to kill in order to stay alive. I rather will subject me to the malice of a diverted blood and bloody brother. I would rather die at the hands of my brother. By saying that, what has he just proven?
The line before, how envenoms him that bears it.
Exactly. How his virtues will betray him. Because he can't stoop to viceful living, his virtues are going to cause his death. Adam, no. I've got a better idea. I have 500 crowns, the thrifty hire I saved under your father. So he has saved 500 crowns from his time in service to Sir Roland de Bois, which I did store to be my foster nurse. Meaning, update that for our language, it's my retirement. This is my retirement fund. This is my 401k. When service should in my old limbs lie lame and unregarded age in corners thrown. Take unregarded age in corners thrown. That is when I'm no longer useful to your family and I'm cast aside. Take that. Take my 500 crowns and capital, he that doth the ravens feed, yea, providently caters for the sparrow, be comfort to my age. Now we are told in Scripture, Gospels, Christ talks about God paying attention to the sparrows. He cares for the fall of one sparrow, etc. And if he cares for that, how much more does he care for you? So he says, take my 500 crowns and I'll leave my life up to God. God will care for me. Well, back up for just a second. Christ says all that in what context? Take no thought for the morrow. Do not lay up treasures on earth. Well, what has old Adam done? He's laid up treasure on earth, 500 crowns. So he says, I'm going to give it away, and I'm going to do what? I'm going to let God, as Christ is kind of implied in that passage. So he offers him the gold. All this I give you, let me be your servant. Though I look old, yet am I strong and lusty in my youth, and I never did apply hot and rebellious liquors in my blood, nor did not with unbashful forehead woo the means of weakness and debility. That is, I didn't catch any STDs. I'm strong in heart and soul. Therefore my age is as a lusty winter, frosty but kindly. Let me go with you. I'll do the service of a younger man in all your business and necessities. Let me keep serving you. No pay. Oh, good old man. How well in thee appears the constant service of the antique world. That word antique, in Shakespeare's day, it's pronounced antic. Like in this word, if someone is antic, Hamlet will say, in the future, if you see me in an antic disposition, what's he talking about? we don't see this used very much. We only see it frantic. If someone's frantic, they're what? Panicked. Acting kind of crazy, acting a little, out of normal. Okay? The constant service of the antique world. Okay, antique obviously means old world. What's he talking about? This notion of kind of, in Shakespeare especially, Roman servants to their masters, who when their masters died with them. Okay? He's bringing up that kind of service. The constant service of the antique world, when service sweat for duty, not for need. Thou art not for the fashion of these times. For the fashion, for the customary practices of these times, where none will sweat, metaphor for work, but for what purpose? Promotion. Promotion. I'll work for you, but you have to guarantee that I'll be able to climb the corporate ladder or your personal household ladder. I'll go from downstairs to upstairs, to use the upstairs, downstairs metaphor. And having that is promotion, do choke their service up, even with the having. That is, and having gotten their promotion, what do? They want more. More. You're not like that, Adam. You're willing to do what? Give it all up. That is, all that you've earned from your service, and to serve willingly without anything in return. It is not so with thee. But no, poor old man, thou prunest a rotten tree. What's the rotten tree? Me. Why? And notice prunest. Trim. You prune a tree not to cut off branches. You prune a tree so that the tree will grow more, so that the tree will produce more fruit. No. You prunest a rotten tree that cannot so much as a blossom yield in. I can't pay you anything. I don't have anything to give you. But we'll go along together. What's he mean? It's equals. We'll go along together. I'll help you, you help me. And ere we have thy youthful wages spent, we'll light upon some settled low content. Before we spend it all, we'll find what? We'll find some lowly house where we will be content. Some low content, some low content. Notice the difference. It's the same word in terms of its spelling. But content and content are two totally different words, all according to the pronunciation. What's the low content or low content imply? What's this showing us on Orlando's part, as opposed to his brothers?
It's okay with a humble life.
Yeah, he's humble. This is showing humility. Okay, Rosaline 2:4. Rosaline with Touchstone, and Touchstone says, actually, we're going to skip to the book. They meet up with Corin and Silvius. And Corin says, I'm skipping a bit. Corin says, line 76, my master is of churlish disposition, and little recks to find the way to heaven by doing deeds of hospitality. Churlish, what does that mean? It comes from the Old English word, churl, which was the lowest level of society. Okay? So churlish disposition is ill-mannered, ill-bred. Okay? So he's talking about his master here, just like Adam was talking about his master Orlando previously. My master is of churlish disposition. Little Rex considers to find the way to heaven, notice, by doing deeds of hospitality. Corin says, you want to find the way to heaven? How do you do it? You be hospitable. Why? Who is it? It's either Paul or Peter in the New Testament. Says, entertain strangers, for people thereby unknowingly have entertained angels. Okay? And this idea of hospitality, by the way, ancient, goes way back before there were even any Jews, before Abraham, etc. It goes back to at least 6,000 or 7,000 BC. And the idea comes from via the Indo-European peoples. The idea is what I just said out of the New Testament, that you show hospitality to strangers who knock at your doors. Why? Because in the Indo-European myths that we find from all these different linguistic groups, stories, fairy tales, etc., those people who come knocking at your door in the middle of a storm might be gods. In the Norse version, the god is often Odin. Okay? And depending on how you treat him, determines how Odin will respond to you. Okay? And again, the motif shows up in Indian literature, Slavic literature, Celtic literature, Greek literature, Latin literature, Germanic literature, etc. Okay? So, he talks about, his master. Besides, his coat, his flocks, bounds of feet are now in sale, and at our sheepcote now, by reason of his absence, there is nothing you will feed on, but what is, come see, etc. So, Rosaline keeps talking, and we're going to skip the rest of that. Pick up with, let's see here, 2:5. Just very, very briefly, I want to point out just one line from 2:5. So, Amiens is singing, and there's Jaques, and there's, just those three, just those two. And Jaques asks for more. He likes this song. Sing more. It will make you melancholy. I thank it. I prithee, more. I can suck melancholy out of a song as a weasel sucks eggs. What's he mean? I can suck melancholy out of a song as a weasel sucks eggs. Weasels did steal eggs. We think, foxes. Foxes were bad too, but weasels were just as bad. So, what do you mean I can suck melancholy out of a song? Is the song that Amiens just sang, under the greenwood tree who loves to lie with me, and turn his merry note unto the sweet bird's throat, come hither, here shall he see no enemy but winter and rough weather. Is there really anything melancholy about that? No, not really. It's, it's...
He's choosing to see it in that way?
Yes. In other words, you can sing a happy song, and I will find the note of sadness in it and pull that out. What's that tell us about Jaques? Okay, he is a foil. He is a melancholic. He has a melancholic disposition. He's the one who, for every silver cloud, he sees the black lining. Or for every silver lining, he sees the black cloud. Okay? He enjoys that. That's what gives him pleasure, is the darker aspect to life and reality. All right? 2:6, Orlando and Adam come in. I'm not going to say anything else about that. 2:7, okay? Duke Sr., the various lords, so they come back in, and Jaques comes in. Why? Because Jaques has met a fool, and he's excited. Line 12. A fool, I met a fool in the forest. A motley fool. Well, motley's referring to the color he's wearing. He's probably wearing like the Harlequin outfit, okay? A miserable world, as I do live by food, I met a fool. That's an oath. He's swearing by what he eats. I met a fool who laid him down and basked him in the sun and railed a lady fortune in good terms, in good set terms, and yet a motley fool. Good morrow, fool, quoth I. No, sir, quoth he, call me not fool till heaven hath sent me fortune. Okay? An allusion to the proverb, fortune favors fools. That is, I'm not a fool yet. Why? Because he's not fortunate. Why is the fool, quote unquote, not fortunate? Where is he? He's in the wood. Be fortunate if I was back in the city, back at the court. Okay, so, and then he drew a dial from his poke, that is clock essentially, and looking on it with lackluster eyes, says very wisely, it is 10 o'clock. Thus we may see, quoth he, how the world wags. 'Tis but an hour ago since it was 9. After 1 hour more, 'twill be 11. And so from hour to hour we ripe, and then from hour to hour we rot, and thereby hangs a tale. Thereby hangs a tale, and I could extrapolate and tell a tale. What would the tale be? You just use the image in my previous class. When we're born, we're given an hourglass. And from the very first breath, the sands of time start dropping away. In other words, from our very first breath, we start to die. Jaques loves that. I mean, because that's about the most pessimistic take you can take on life there is. Okay? So Jaques wants to be a fool. He says, oh, I want a motley coat. Why? Fools can do what? That the rest of us can't, if we're not a fool. They can speak their minds. And those in power have to accept it. Okay? You'll see this in King Lear especially. Lear spends a lot of time with the fool, and the fool repeatedly speaks and repeatedly calls Lear to account. Duke Senior, thou shalt have one. You want to be a fool? Okay, you'll get your coat. It is my only suit. That is, man, it's what I was made for. Provided that you weed your better judgments of all opinion that grows rank in them, that I am wise. Don't think I'm wise. Think of me as a fool. I must have liberty with all, as large a charter as the wind. As large a charter as the wind. Well, the wind does what? Blows where it wants. Who can tell the wind? Stop. He says, I'm going to be like that. So you can't obstruct me. You can't try to stop me. To blow on whom I please, for so fools have. Why? Because of that idea that I talked about the other day of the holy fool. That the fool is a person touched by God, and so people said, okay, let's see what he has to say. And they that are most galled with my folly, what's it mean to be galled? Perturbed, disturbed, to have your own little world kind of rocked. That is, when I speak my foolishness, if it kind of bothers you, what's happened? Bing! Gotcha. I've spoken truth to your falsity. So, and they that are most galled with my folly, they most must laugh. Laugh at what? What's the purpose of satire? Is the purpose of satire to tear down? That's part of the technique of satire. Satire ultimately has as its goal reformation. It's to reform the person or object, thing that's being satirized, right? So what do? Think Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live is not as good satire now as it was 40 years ago. In the 70s, it was superb. Why? Because it made fun of lots of people, but it was clear the intent was, you damn fool, stop doing what you're doing. Change your tactic. Okay? The idea is, as Shakespeare will put in Hamlet, you hold a mirror up to nature. What's the mirror do? Look, Chloe, this is what you look like. And you go, I don't want to look like that to the rest of the people. So you change your behavior. You stop being a fool. You stop being full of vice, and you start being wise. You start acting virtuously. That's the purpose of satire, okay? But for satire to really work, the person who's being satirized has got to do what? They've got to laugh at themselves. I don't think he probably does. I don't think if Trump watches Saturday Night Live with Alec Baldwin doing Trump, I don't think he probably laughs. George H.W. Bush used to laugh when Dana Carvey would do his impressions of Bush. Because Dana Carvey was spot on, first of all. This is in the 90s, late 80s and 90s. But, they went and they did speaking gigs together where, Harvey would go, it's not prudent, not wise. And Bush would just laugh listening to him. Okay? Why? Because Bush saw exactly himself in Dana Carvey's impersonation / parody or satire of him. Okay? So he goes on. He that a fool doth very wisely hit, doth very foolishly, although he's smart, not to seem senseless of the bob. Okay? If the fool wisely hits him, he acts foolishly if he what? If he seems senseless of being hit. The fool says what? I'm perfect. Just as I am. Trump did the thing yesterday, and now it's pull out of some troops from northern Syria. It's not that many. It's like, less than 100. But he also told Turkey, we're going to pull these troops out, but don't attack. And Turkey attacked because they've been planning this for over 2 years. And Trump said via tweet, in my infinite and unsurpassed wisdom. I don't care if you're the wisest person in the world. You can't claim infinite wisdom, right? I'm not saying Trump is the wisest person in the world by any means. What does that acknowledge? He needs a fool in the White House to do what? Mr. President? Yeah. Mirror! If not, the wise man's folly is anatomized. There's that word. Is anatomized even by the squandering glances of the fool. Give me my motley fool's clothes. Give me leave to speak my mind, and I will through and through cleanse the foul body of the infected world. What's the infected world? The whole shebang. He's saying, I'm going to become like who? Who went around asking dangerous questions that ultimately got him killed? Christ didn't ask questions, he kind of laid down the law. A little bit different. Socrates, close. Socrates. Why? Socrates was told by the Oracle of Delphi, you're the wisest man in the world. He said, get out of here. There's no way I'm the wisest man in the world. So he went around started asking people questions to find somebody wiser than him. What did he find? Moron, fool, idiot, etc. Why was he the wisest person in the world? Because he said he wasn't wise. Okay? So, he's going to do the same. He's going to go around and do what? Speak his mind. And I will cleanse the foul body of the infected world if they will patiently receive my medicine. Notice, patiently. What's patience imply? What do you have to do if you're patient? Listen. What else? Keep going. Put listen and wait together and put a little dark coating on top of it. Endure. Right? When you're a patient at a hospital, are you there because you're happy? No. You're there because you're sick. You are enduring the stay. Especially if it's, many nights and they come to wake you up every night at 3 hours of time in the night and say, how are you doing? It's like, damn well better if you let me sleep. Okay? So, Duke Sr., most mischievous foul sin in chiding sin. most mischievous, foul sin in chiding sin. Duke Sr. says it is a sin to chide sin. But not as a simple declarative statement, because what comes after? For thou thyself hast been a libertine. What's he really mean? You can't go around pointing out everybody else's faults. Why?
He's also a sinner.
Look in the mirror. Michael Jackson song. Start with the man in the mirror. Okay?
Ooh, that didn't hold up, though.
Yeah, not a good reference. As sensual, for thou hast been thyself been a libertine, as sensual as the brutish thing itself. And all the embossed sores and headed evils that thou with license of free foot hast caught. The sores, headed evils, that's elusive language. ALLUSIVE. The sores and headed evils. Headed evils, it's kind of alluding to boils. He's talking about sexual diseases. Because he's been such a libertine. Wouldst thou disgorge into the general world? No. I'll get you the motley, but you are not going to be the one to go out and cleanse the world. Okay? So he talks, Jacques goes on and talks about pride. We're going to skip a little bit. Orlando comes in with sword drawn. Okay? And because they're all eating, and Orlando says, I'm hungry, somebody feed me. Okay? Let's see here. Line 101. Duke Sr. says, what would you have? What do you need? Your gentleness shall force more than your force move us to gentleness. Tell us what you need, and your gentleness shall do what? It shall force more. Your gentleness shall force from us more than your force can ever obtain. Be nice. Try the open way. First, I almost died for food. Let me have it. Sit down. Eat. Welcome to our table. Speak you so gently? Pardon me, I pray you. I thought that all things had been savage here. After all, where are they? They're in the wood. They're away from civilization. And therefore put I on the countenance of stern commandment. But whate'er you are that in this desert inaccessible under the shade of melancholy boughs, lose and neglect the creeping hours of time. Why are the boughs melancholy? Notice it's under the shade of melancholy boughs. Shade means gloominess, darkness. Well, melancholy is a gloominess or darkness of the soul. I know a lot of people, I would be one of the first among them, to say, it's almost impossible to be melancholy if you're in a forest. I mean, there's been all kinds of scientific research. A big old article announced, I don't remember it was, 2 or 3 weeks ago, were saying doctors should prescribe people who are depressed to go out into a natural park and just walk for a couple hours a day. And that being in the green will naturally lift their spirits more than any kind of Zoloft or, other drug. But he calls it melancholy. Why? It's not the court. Orlando has a little relearning to do. So, he says, if ever you have looked on better days, if ever you have been where bells have knolled to church, the idea of the bell ringing is an indication it's time to go to church. If ever sat at any good man's feast, if ever from your eyelids wiped a tear, and know what 'tis to pity and be pitied. Notice, to show pity and to receive pity, let gentleness my strong enforcement be, in the which hope I blush and hide my sword. So what are all those if clauses indicating? If you've looked on better days, what's he mean by better days? In court. If you've ever lived in real human society, if you've ever, how do we know? Because there's bells tolling you to church. Where are they now? They're in the middle of the woods. You think there's a church there? A physical space built artificially, dedicated to the worship of God. No, there's not. What does the wood become? It becomes the space dedicated for that. Duke Sr. Yeah, true, we have seen better days. Yes, and we have with holy bell been knolled to church. And we have sat at good men's feast and wiped our eyes of drops that sacred pity hath engendered. Notice, pity there gets qualified. It's sacred. Sacred means holy, sanctified by God. So take a seat. Eat. Take upon command what help we have that to your wanting may be ministered. Let us minister to you. Orlando, hold your food just a little bit. Why? I got an old man I need to go get. I go to find my fawn and give it food. There is an old poor man who after me hath many a weary step limped in pure love. Till he be first sufficed, oppressed with two weak evils, age and hunger, I will not touch a bit. What's this show us about Orlando? Who's he thinking about? Adam. He's not looking out for number one first. Drives me crazy every time I fly. What's part of the spiel that the
put your mask on.
Put your mask on first before you help that child next to you. Like hell. If that thing ever drops down and I'm with, years ago, if I were with our four kids or my wife, I'm sure would say the exact same thing. I'm not going to put mine on first. It's going to the kid next to me. Why? I can hold my breath for a long time while they're sitting there, going berserk. He says, Adam eats before I do. Okay? Go. We won't touch anything. Duke Sr., thou seest, we are not all alone unhappy. We're not the only unhappy ones in the world. This wide and universal theater, and it's just part of Shakespeare's brilliance. Because the theater, surface level of the text means the globe. Actually, it's not the globe, because that's not when this is performed. The theater. But what else is it? It's the world. So he draws the people in the theater and makes them a microcosm for the whole world. This wide and universal theater presents more woeful pageants than the scene wherein we play in. What's the scene wherein we play in? My life, Bjorn's life, Chloe's life, Josh's life. There's a lot more lives than just our own. What's the Duke saying? And we all suffer what? Hamlet's slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And then Jaques gets one of the greatest speeches in all of Shakespeare. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. Merely. What's merely mean?
It's only part of the whole.
Yeah. Simply. Only. That's all we are. We're just players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. Then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face. Why shining morning face? Shining, probably scrubbed, cleaned, but also shining, probably looking forward to learning. Might describe Shakespeare then more than it does some of us, okay? Creeping like snail, but then we get this part, unwillingly to school. Maybe that tells us more about Shakespeare. He didn't like going to school. Bear in mind, School in the 16th century, not like school for us. Pain was a regular, component. Real pain, not metaphorical pain, not, staring at somebody. Ooh, that's violence. Don't, nonsense. I won't get off on that rabbit trail. So, he says, first the infant, that's first stage. Then the whining schoolboy, that's the second stage. Then the lover, sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. A ballad about an eyebrow. Why? Because what does the lover do? He's like the lunatic, Midsummer Night's Dream. Then a soldier, fourth one, full of strange oaths, and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. There's an awful lot in that section about the soldier. Full of strange oaths. Why? Why are the oaths strange? Well, what does the soldier swear? To serve his lord? To serve his country? To what end? To whatever his lord or country say. That's why they're strange. What else? Bearded like the pard, having bristling mustaches like the leopards, jealous in honor. That's jealous of honor. Sudden and quick in quarrel. That is, why is the one character in Romeo and Juliet named Mercutio? What kind of spirit does he have? Mercurial. Hot-tempered. Like Hotspur. Will do what? Will gut you as soon as talk to you. Seeking what? The bubble reputation. What did Falstaff say about honor? It is a mere escutcheon. That is something to be worn. Like a little medal. What does that little medal confer? Honor. Purple Heart, what does it confer? Wounded in combat. Does a stupid little medal really say all that? No, it doesn't. Okay. Seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. So that people know that I died how? A hero. What's Jaques' point there, though? Yeah, but you're still dead. And then the justice. In fair, round belly with good capon lined, rooster castrated to make the flesh more tender for eating, often presented to judges as a bribe. Well, notice the judge is the only one we get a physical description of. He's what? Fat. Gluttonous. With eye severe, beard a formal cut. That's kind of a severe looking face. Legalistic. Full of wise saws and modern instances. Modern instances, probably modern precedents, modern examples of the law that bear on this case. Wise saws, old sayings, modern day, Supreme Court judgments from previous decades. And so he plays his part. The sixth stage shifts into the lean and slippered Pantaloon, a ridiculous, enfeebled old man. With spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose, well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank. He's still wearing clothes he had as a youth, but now, because he's so shrunken, they're all baggy. And his big, manly voice turning again toward childish treble. Gets high, kind of wheezy, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all, that ends this strange, eventful history, is second childishness in mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. Sans French without. Without teeth, Shakespeare's day, a lot more people lost their teeth than do in our day. Eyes, glasses were expensive. I don't even remember if they'd been invented yet. I'm pretty sure Galileo, or was it Benjamin Franklin? Can't remember. Sans taste, what happens as you get older? Your taste buds die. Sans everything. Sans life. Okay? Notice, second childishness and mere oblivion. Mere oblivion might be implying actual death, or it could be implying what happens to some as they age. Dementia. They lose their minds, literally, like Alzheimer's. I've started to come to think, and I'm almost positive I'm right here, that when King Lear opens the play and he divides his kingdom, that's an indication of what's going on in Lear's mind. Take that back. It's definitely an indication of what's going on in Lear's mind. Lear is usually described as mad, crazy, lunatic. I don't think he is. I think he has Alzheimer's. The exact description Shakespeare gives. My mom died of Alzheimer's a couple of years ago. My dad has Alzheimer's now. It's like it follows the progression of the disease perfectly. They didn't have the term. Doesn't mean that people didn't have what became called Alzheimer's. Okay. So what? Now, Jaques, we're told, is melancholy. He celebrates the melancholy. What does that speech tell us? What does that speech show us? How does all, according to Jaques, all human life end? Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. Death. Notice, no redemption, no idea, no heaven, no hell. It's just you end. Okay? Good thing Adam wasn't there, right? Because he's the old guy here. So Orlando and Adam come in. Amiens sings. And let's pick up with Act 3. Back at the court, okay, Duke Frederick comes in. Okay, so when we last saw Duke Frederick, he was talking with the lords and others about whom? His daughter and Rosaline. Now he's talking about Orlando, because Orlando's now left. He says, it cannot be. Were I not the better part made mercy, I should not seek an absent argument of my revenge, thou present. But look to it, find out thy brother, whereso he is, seek him with candle, bring him dead or living, within this 12-month, or turn thou no more to seek a living in our territory. Find your brother, you have a year, and if you don't bring him to me within, why does he want him brought? So he can kill him. If you don't bring him to me, then what's going to happen to Oliver? He loses everything. Okay? Oliver, I don't love my brother. Why are you doing this to me? More villain thou. The fact that you don't love your brother, that shows how much of a villain you are. Okay? 3-2, Orlando comes in. And what's he do? He's got a piece of paper. He nails it onto a tree. Or sticks it onto a tree. And we hear, what he's talking about. He's talking about Rosaline. Touchstone comes in. And Touchstone asks Corin, wast ever in court? He says, no, truly. Then thou art damned. Nay, I hope. Truly thou art damned, like an ill-roasted egg, all on one side. For not being at court, why? Prove it. What's your reason? Why, if thou never wast at court, thou never sawest good manners. Right? Court, courtliness, courtesy. It's where all manners and courteous behavior comes from. If thou never sawest good manners, then thy manners must be wicked. If they're not good, then they have to be the opposite of that. It's an interesting logic. And wickedness is sin, and sin is damnation. Therefore, thou art in a parlous state, shepherd. Because you've never been at court, therefore you must be in hell, or deserve hell. Not a whit, Touchstone. Those that are good manners are at the court are as ridiculous in the country as the behavior of the country is most mockable at the court. In other words, behavior at the court is one thing. Behavior in the woods, in the natural world, is something else. You told me you sleep not at the court, but you kiss your hands. Then courtesy would be uncleanly if courtiers were shepherds. Why? Where do shepherds put their hands? You don't want to know. Okay, so they go back and forth, which I'm going to skip a bunch, and pick up with Rosaline enters, and she's reading one of the papers she has found. Okay, now, bear in mind, this is Rosaline as Ganymede. Line 86. From the east to western end, no jewel is like Rosalind. Her worth being mounted on the wind, through all the world bears Rosalind. All the pictures fairest lined are but black to Rosaline. Let no face be kept in mind, but the fair of Rosaline. Wait, the first four lines sound like in, the last four lines sound like eind. What in the world? Touchstone. I'll rhyme you so 8 years together, dinners and suppers and sleeping hours expected. It is the right butter women's right to... Shut up, go away. And so Touchstone does what? He just ad-libs. He improvises. If a hart do like a hind, let him seek out Rosaline. If the cat will after kind, so be sure will Rosaline. Winter garments must be lined, so must slender Rosaline. That is, she's got to be covered with something. They that reap must sheaf and bind, then to cart with Rosaline. Sweetest nut hath surest rind, such a nut as Rosaline. He that sweetest rose will find, must find love's prick and Rosaline. And whenever Shakespeare uses the word prick, always intend there's double entendre. Always, every time. Okay? It's one of the things that angered Samuel Johnson about him. So, she says, I found these on a tree, etc., etc. And Celia finds one. And she starts reading it. Okay? So there's all these poems hanging from trees all of a sudden. And they talk about the kind of verse it is, and it's a pretty bad verse. And I want to pick up with Rosaline and Celia on page 315, around line 200, 199 or so. So they're talking about Orlando. Celia says, you once wore a chain. The man who wrote these things is now wearing that chain. Okay? And she's like, really? Orlando? Mm-hmm. So, I prithee, take the cork out of thy mouth, that I may drink thy tidings. Rosaline's telling this to Celia. What's she mean, take the cork out of thy mouth? Tell me, clearly, who wrote this? So she says that I may drink thy tidings, so you may put a man in your belly. Get pregnant. Is he of God's making? What manner of man? Is his head worth a hat or his chin worth? So they skip a little bit. It is young Orlando that tripped up the wrestler's heels, and your heart within an instant. Alas, the day, what shall I do? 2:16 with my doublet and hose. She's saying, damn. And I'm in the woods, dressed as a man. I don't want to be dressed as a man if Orlando's around. What did he when thou sawest him? What said he? How looked he? Wherein went he? What makes he here? Did he ask for me? Where remains I? What does he think? What is it? Skip a little bit. Doth he know that I am in this forest and in man's apparel? Look, does he still look as good as he did? And Celia says, there lay he stretched along like a wounded knight. Though it be pity to see such a sight, it well becomes the ground. That is, Orlando stretched on the ground. That makes the ground look nice. Celia, cry, holler, etc., etc. He comes to kill my heart, Rosaline says, 243. I would sing my song without a burden. Thou bringest me out of tune. Do you not know I am a woman when I think I must speak? Now, a lot of women have problems with some of the words Shakespeare puts in women's mouths. So Orlando and Jaques come in. Now, bear in mind, this is Rosaline as Ganymede. She recognizes Orlando. He doesn't recognize her. And to see this in performance, there is a Globe performance that is available on DVD. Parts of it are on YouTube. That's just superb. The woman who plays Rosaline just knocks it out of the park. Okay? And you have to have a really, really great actress do that. So, Jaques and Orlando talk back and forth a little bit. Rosaline, is there, and Jaques, so Rosaline's is your love's name? Yes, just 261. I do not like her name. There was no thought of pleasing you when she was christened. In other words, who gives a damn what you think? What stature is she of? Just as high as she reaches up to here. And Rosaline hears all that. Okay? So they keep going back and forth, and then Rosaline, we hear, says to Celia, I will speak to him like a saucy lackey, line 292. Under that habit, play the knave with him. I'm going to play jokes with him. Do you hear, Forrester? Yeah, what do you want? What is it o'clock? You should ask me what time of day. There is no clock in the forest. In other words, it's morning, it's afternoon, it's noon. Don't ask me for a specific time. Why? He can't see the sun. If he could see the sun, he could estimate the time. Then is there no true lover in the forest, else sighing every minute and groaning every hour would detect the lazy foot of time as well as of clock. She's overheard all this conversation. She's overheard him talking about his love for Rosaline, and she's trying to do what? Prove it. If you were really in love, you would know the exact time. And why not the swift foot of time? Time travels in diverse paces with diverse persons. Right? True or not true? Literally not true. Experientially, that's true, right? Have any of you had a 24-hour day that seemed to take a lot longer than 24 hours? What about months? I mean, we're already almost to the middle of October. It's like yesterday was January 1st, or yesterday was August 26th, I'll tell you who time ambles withal, who time trots withal, who time gallops withal, and who he stands. He says, who doth he trot with? Trots hard with a young maid between the contract of her marriage, that is, engagement, and the day it is solemnized. Solemnized the actual marriage ceremony. If the interim be but a snight, time's pace so hard. Okay, so who does it amble with? And they go back with, who does it gallop with? Thief to the gallows. Right? If any of you are married, how long did it take between when you got engaged and when you got married? More often, I was like 9 months. It seemed like 9 years. Okay? But imagine your execution's coming up. I bet you those days go by pretty quickly. Who stays it still with all? Lawyers in the vacation. Why would lawyers in the vacation? That is when they're not sitting in court. Who needs lawyers? The people who hire them. Okay? It's the people. Time stands still for those clients because what are they waiting for? Come on, let's get this case. And Shakespeare had several interactions with lawyers. He was sued 3 or 4 times. Okay? So, they keep talking. Orlando, Rosalind, they talk about, principal evils of women and all this kind of stuff. And let's pick up with top of 317, line 390. Rosaline says, love is merely a madness, and I tell you, deserves as well a dark house and a whip as madmen do. That is, lovers deserve, its real name was Bethlehem, but because of how it was pronounced, it became Bedlam, an insane asylum. Lovers deserve that and the whip, she says, as madmen do. The reason why they are not so punished and cured is that the lunacy is so ordinary that the whippers are in love too. Why do we not throw lovers in Bedlam? Because we're all afflicted with it. Yet I profess curing. I can cure you of your love. Have you done it before? Yeah. And she talks about how, I don't want to be cured. Orlando's like, I like being in love. I would cure you, if you would but call me Rosaline and come every day to my coat, that sheepfold, and woo me. I will cure you of this love for Rosaline. And here's how. I will pretend to be Rosaline, and you come every day, essentially at this hour, to this place. And I'll make you no longer love Rosaline. Okay, I will. Tell me where. And she tells him where. Let's see. Not much time. Touchstone. Line 12 of the next scene. Gives us a line, Shakespeare, gives us a line that almost everyone takes to be an allusion to the murder of Christopher Marlowe. He says, pick up with 10. When a man's verses cannot be understood, nor a man's good wit seconded with the forward child, understanding, that is, understanding is the second of the forward child, it strikes a man more dead than a great reckoning in a little room. The great reckoning in a little room. Christopher Marlowe, from what we know, or what we are told, Christopher Marlowe was killed for a small bardette in a pub's inn room. He was killed for not paying, essentially, his tab. Okay? That's the official story. The unofficial story is that he might have been killed because he had been a spy for Queen Elizabeth. A literal, what we think of as spies. He had been one of those for Queen Elizabeth. How do we know? Because Christopher Marlowe was granted one of the reasons, he was granted a master's degree from Cambridge University. In order to be granted a master's degree from Cambridge University, well, one, you have to have attended Cambridge University, but you also have to swear allegiance to the crown and to the church. Christopher Marlowe was a known atheist. He couldn't have sworn allegiance to the church. Okay? And there are some other reasons that indicate he was a spy for Queen Elizabeth. He was given some kind of honor. I can't remember what it was for that. Christopher Marlowe is also one of those, if you saw the stupid film Anonymous, one of those who some people say actually wrote Shakespeare's plays. Problem with that, many of the plays weren't first produced, at least, until long after Marlowe's death. Doesn't mean he couldn't have written them, right? He could have written a whole slew of them, and like Emily Dickinson, just laid them around in his apartment for people to find upon his death. Okay? Like happened with a lot of Dickinson's poems. So, Audrey and Touchstone start talking, and they fall in love. Okay? Oliver, I'm going to skip the rest of that. 3-4, Rosaline and Celia come in. And yeah, you're going to skip most of that too. You're going to skip all of that. 3-5. There's not enough time to go into this. We'll just stop there. We'll pick up with 3-5 on Thursday. Okay, so we'll finish this on Thursday. And I'm going to have to decide between now and Thursday whether we're going to do Merchant of Venice or not. I'll let you know.